Yo! Guess who's back, complete with bird song, Amy's Choice style. And now that my throat isn't killing me, it's time to talk about Extremis! Or Extremis, whatever. So, this is Steven Moffat writing again, and I may just be misremembering, I don't know, my memory might just be really off, but it feels like it's been a while since we've had a Moffat episode that was just in the middle of the season and wasn't like a finale of any kind. Like, the first thing that's come to mind is Good Man Goes to War in Series 6, and even that played as sort of like a finale for the first half of Series 6. This is just sort of a Moffat episode, and it feels like a little while since we've had one of those, and people seem kind of torn on this one. It seems strange. Like, I say that, you go on the Doctor Who Facebook page, and you go on, like, YouTube comments for, the after shows, and it seems like the majority is always, really fond of the episode. Even Knock Knock, which I did not care for at all. A lot of people were calling it brilliant. Then you have people like Mr. TARDIS and some other acquaintances of mine who will just be like, oh, for Moffat episodes in particular, like, this episode reminds me a lot of Hellbent, in that there seems to be, like, those of us in the fandom who have soured on Moffat have really soured on him at this point. And I will go on record right now, in case I haven't said it before on this channel. I really liked Hellbent. I know that a lot of people call it one of the worst finales, one of the worst episodes of last series. I really liked that episode. I think everyone's problems with it are missing the point, not to come off as too pretentious. But, and Extremis, I think, is another win for Moffat in my book. I was sort of concerned after last year's Christmas special and after the pilot were sort of mediocre that Heaven Sent and Hellbent were like Moffat's last hurrah, because back when it seemed for a long time that Series 9 was going to be Moffat's last, and Heaven Sent and Hellbent, both as a singular piece, really play as like a culmination of all of the themes that Moffat had been talking about with this show up to that point. And it felt like if Moffat's era was ever going to end, that would be the most appropriate place. And so I was wondering, like, even if other episodes were going to be really good, if this last year was just going to be Moffat's own episodes were going to feel like spinning his wheels until he was gone, because he'd already told the ending that he wanted to tell for his era. Extremis does not feel like that, and it gives me hope that maybe there's some more great episodes left in Moffat before he leaves for good. Because, I can understand the complaints that people have with Extremis conceptually, which is that, by the end of the episode, it turns out that, everything's been a simulation. The whole episode, past the cold open, was all fake, and we haven't actually been watching the real versions of the characters. And I can see where people would be tempted to call that wasted time, where it's like, why should we care? Why should any of this matter, especially on repeat viewings, if we're not actually watching the real Nardole and Bill and the Doctor? But I don't know, part of me is fine with that, because I sort of accept this episode as not a character-driven piece, where you could make the argument that Virtual Nardole and Virtual Bill and Virtual Doctor are their own characters, distinct from the real counterparts, and that we're watching just the adventure of those versions. But even then, my more prepared argument is just that this, for once, Moffat is not uh, a problem that I have with a lot of Moffat stories, even the ones that I really like, even the ones like Hellbent, are that often it seems like Moffat will have really cool, really original ideas in his episodes, and he will not give them any focus whatsoever because they're just a means to an end. They're just a plot device to get us to a character development place. And I love character developments, and I love having episodes be character arcs and letting an entire series be a long form like character arc for the Doctor or the companion. But at some at some point, sometimes I just want Moffat to tackle an idea and just explore the idea for an episode, and that's what this episode is. And it's really fascinating. I know that people are quick to make comparisons to The Matrix and other like virtual reality stuff that we've done. I just got done watching season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, and that just got done doing a whole multi-episode arc about like characters in a simulation. But Extremis handles it from a very different perspective, and handles it in a way that's more, again, idea focused, more about the what if. What if there was this way to tell that you were in a simulation and everyone who found out just could not handle it and they offed themselves? And what if we spend the whole episode watching the Doctor and Bill and Nardole go on what seems like it begins as sort of this adventure what if story of, okay, what's the deal with this book and why does it make people kill themselves? And then eventually gets to, oh, none of them are real, how do they cope with that? And why aren't they real, who made this simulation? And I don't know, I really like the way it's handled. I really like that this episode was just allowed to be Steven Moffat has an idea and lets the idea play out for the whole episode. It is so rare that that happens. I feel like the last time that that happened was like all the way back in series 4 with Silence of the Library, just exploring the library and the Vashta Narada as a concept. After that, it seems like all of his episodes, once he's showrunner, are about using the show as a means to talk about the show. And I like that. I like that that's Moffat's MO. And once you look at every Moffat episode through the lens of he's using Doctor Who to talk about Doctor Who's nature as a television series, then his episodes become a lot more fascinating. Hellbent becomes a lot more intriguing. Day of the Doctor becomes a lot more intriguing if you're looking at them as Moffat is using the show to talk about how he sees the show. And I think in a lot of ways, where Hellbent was the culmination of that in terms of the Doctor as a character and in terms of what this show is about thematically, Extremis is the culmination conceptually, where this is, in a way, like abstractly, in a nutshell, Moffat's entire era, which is we're literally watching the Doctor watch a Doctor Who episode. And I just love that that's a premise for this episode. And that, like, the cold open ends with, loading title Extremis before we get the actual title screen. I would have loved it if we didn't actually have a title screen for this episode. If the Doctor seeing the title Extremis is all that we got of the title. Because that's sort of the episode subtly telling you what it is before, like, it's subtly hinting at the twist before you realize what the twist is, which is that this is just the Doctor observing an episode of Doctor Who as written by Steven Moffat. Excuse me. And it's really fun to look at it through that lens. And like the comparison at the end that he makes with Super Mario realizing that he's in a game and deleting himself because he's sick of dying. I feel like an even more apt comparison would be this is the Doctor and Nardole and Bill and everyone in the show realizing that they're in a TV show and killing themselves because of the fact that it's an artifice. And I don't know, like there's just so many like different ways in which I love this as like such a Moffat idea and done well because it's actually allowed to be the episode. It's not just a one-off plot point in service of, I don't know, whatever River Song is doing or whatever the Master's doing. And Missy is in this episode, but it's all flashbacks, and that's the setup. It's all, okay, we're revealing what's in the vault. I really like that we do not play the fact that Missy is in the vault as a twist. Like, we don't save it for the end of the episode to confirm she's what's in the vault. No, like, one of the Doctor's first lines of dialogue is addressing the vault as Missy, and so it's like, yeah, everyone called it. The episode isn't trying to play it up like a surprise. And, yeah, this is one of the better arcs, I think, that Moffat has handled in that sense, and that it isn't even really an arc. Like, I almost question why we bothered playing it as a secret at all, but it didn't really become relevant until this episode, so I can sort of get it. But yeah, it's like in another Moffat episode, like an opening or finale, I feel like we would have made the episode all about the Doctor executing Missy, and the simulation and the alien invasion would have been pure background stuff in service of like the Doctor and Missy's relationship. And I'm really glad that we didn't do that this time. We actually let an episode be about something, and like something that isn't just a thematic Doctor character study type thing. And it feels like a while since we've gotten that from Moffat. And some other little things I like, speaking of Missy being executed, I like that she's not afraid to beg for her life. Like, you can argue that there's certain contexts in which that's out of character for the Master, that's in character for the Master, but on my read of the Master as a character, it feels really in in keeping true to the spirit of that character that they would beg for their life, that they would go out kicking and screaming, and that their last words would be something of like an appeal to the Doctor, like, I'm your friend, don't do this. And yeah, I find that worth noting because throughout so much of the modern series, both Missy and John Sims' Master never really struck me as being the Master. Like, Missy more so than John Sim, but both of them really feel like a different character than the classic series. And so whenever they do something that's, I feel, in keeping with classic Master and how I read this character, and even the Eric Roberts version, like, say what you want about Eric Roberts as a performer, but I feel like writing-wise, the the enemy within the TV movie got the Master right for the most part, just in terms of characterization. So in the rare moments when the modern series really characterizes the Master in a spot-on sort of way, I feel like I need to congratulate it. And the whole execution bit felt like, oh, I'm actually watching Michelle Gomez play the Master for the first time in however many episodes she's been in. Like, this is her fourth episode. And I only now feel like, okay, she's playing the Master. But, yeah, other bits of note. The Doctor had my exact reaction to Moby Dick. Like, get on with it, get to the whale already. I love that line because I just finished reading Moby Dick for like the second time. And it's so, whatever. That was a nice little moment. Uh, I mentioned when I was talking about Oxygen how that episode managed to be effectively scary, and I think that Extremis also was scary, but in a different way. Moffat is a guy who likes to pride himself on tapping into the fear factor of Doctor Who. Make you hide behind the couch. That's his. That's his favorite saying in regards to the Doctor Who sort of fear factor. And when he taps into it, he really does tap into it. And this episode had a similar effect on me that Listen did, where not necessarily hide behind the couch. There's nothing like jump scare, like horror movie type scary, but it's really unsettling. Like, I spent a lot of this episode squirming in my seat just because of the atmosphere. Even before you realize everything's virtual, there's this real off-putting, like, oh, what is happening? Everything just feels wrong. And when they're at CERN, and the guy who's, I guess, the head of CERN, does the shadow test on Bill and Nardole, where he has them repeat numbers, that's when it gets really scary, where it's like, okay, what's going on? What is this guy doing? Why is everyone trying to murder themselves? And Nardole and Bill, once they're out there and they're back in the and they're back in like the projector room, and Nardole starts genuinely freaking out. That was really effective. Like, I'm freaking out along with them. Like, this does not feel right. What is happening? And unlike Listen, I think Extremis does a much better job of it than Listen, because by the end of Listen, it is, again, it's exactly what I've been talking about. It's, oh, there was actually nothing. This was not about the scary side. This was just another excuse on the part of Moffat to spend 45 minutes analyzing the Doctor and the nature of Doctor Who as a show. Listen is a prime example of that, where we set up this kind of interesting idea, which is, what is the thing that is under everyone's bed? What is the thing that everyone in the human race can relate to having nightmares about? The thing that always seems to be in the room with you, but you can never really tell. And the episode drops that completely to basically say there never was a creature, maybe there was, who cares? It's all about the Doctor as a character, and that's the note that we're ending the show on. Extremis is not that. Extremis is that thing that you think is wrong with the world is, there really is something wrong, and there is a reason to be scared, and it's not like a cop-out. Because I've heard people call it a cop-out, where it's like, oh, it's a simulation, that translates to it being a cop-out, that there was never any real threat. No, this was, there was a real threat here. The threat of, like, learning that you are not alive, that you're a simulation. That's not a cop-out. That is everyone in this episode who may or may not have been real people decided to kill themselves. And that's a really affecting idea, I think. And, I don't know, it's a really dark, effectively off-putting episode. And it's something that I've sort of wanted from Moffat for a while, and I really liked the way that it played. I really liked this episode. I think on further watches, I might even love this episode. For me, it's fighting with Thin Ice as the best of the season, because, and I go into this more on the live stream about Thin Ice, which is the main reason I like that episode, is that Sarah Dollard seems to have a real classic Who sensibility of just let the Doctor and companion go on an adventure, and you can have some character growth through that adventure, but you don't want to be... It's just nice. It's nice in the Moffat era to have episodes that can take a break from analyzing the show's own material Like, I like fourth wall breaking, I like meta narratives, so I'm fine, more than a lot of people I think are, with the show sort of analyzing itself. Like, Moffat episodes are the designated analyzing what Doctor Who means episodes. But I'm glad that for the first time in a long time we just got Extremis, which is Moffat sort of still doing that, but also just writing a cool what if science fiction story. And I don't know, that's sort of all I have to say. I guess my one big annoyance with the episode is the Doctor being blind. I how terrible he is at hiding it. He's real bad at hiding that he's blind. Where like every other scene, like nearly every exchange of dialogue with the Doctor in it involves him finding out that, or him revealing that he's blind in some way, and people just don't pick up on it. And that's the one real complaint I have with the episode. But outside of that, I don't know. This was a real strong episode, and this was a win for Moffat in my book. I'm really looking forward to next time. I don't know. I really liked it.